They want you to believe that crime is colorblind, that gangsters are just gangsters and the law treats them all the same. But there was one black man who proved that was a lie just by existing. His name was Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson. And he didn't terrify white America because he broke their laws. He terrified them because he broke their rules. The unwritten ones. The ones that said black men don't command territory, don't dictate terms to white mobsters, don't sit at negotiation tables as equals. Every time Italian crime bosses shook his hand, every time Harlem money stayed in Harlem pockets, and every time police couldn't touch him, the whole illusion cracked. Because Bumpy Johnson became living proof that white control wasn't natural. It was just enforced. And when that enforcement failed, fear set in. Today, we're diving deep into the story they never wanted you to hear about the man who made white America listen to black power without asking permission. Picture Harlem in 1935, the biggest black neighborhood in America. But walk down Lenox Avenue and look closer. White landlords own the buildings. White cops patrol the streets. White politicians make the decisions. And white gangsters want to control the money. Dutch Schultz rolls into town with his crew, demanding a cut of every numbers game, every dice roll, every bet placed by black hands in black neighborhoods. He's got the police in his pocket and violence on his side. This is how it's supposed to work. White crime bosses expand. Black operators submit or get eliminated. But Bumpy Johnson is watching, learning, and planning something nobody expects. Johnson came up from South Carolina in the 1920s, just another teenager riding the Great Migration north. But by the 1930s, he's working with Stephanie St. Clair, the Caribbean immigrant they called Madam Queen. She runs numbers in Harlem, employs hundreds of people, and keeps the profits flowing through black hands instead of white ones. When Dutch Schultz demands his piece of their action, most people would negotiate or surrender. St. Clair and Johnson choose war. They fight back against a white mobster who has killed dozens of people and owns half the police department. And here's what nobody expected. They win. Schultz gets himself murdered by the Italian mafia in 1935, but not before Johnson proves something dangerous. That a black man could look a white gangster in the eye and say no. That Harlem wasn't just another neighborhood to be conquered. That black money didn't automatically belong to white hands. If you want more hidden stories like this, subscribe to Black Stories Untold. Now, back to what happened next. After Schultz dies, the Italian families move into Harlem. But instead of the usual takeover, something unprecedented happens. Lucky Luciano's organization approaches Johnson for a meeting. Not a surrender, not a shakedown, a negotiation. They offer him a deal where he controls street-level operations in Harlem while they take a percentage. Johnson accepts, but on one condition that changes everything. He keeps his territory, his authority, his respect. Frank Costello, one of the most powerful mob bosses in America, starts doing business with Johnson as if he's another family head. They discuss terms. They honor agreements. They resolve disputes through conversation instead of violence. White organized crime figures are treating a black man like an equal partner in ways that white society never would. And that's when the real terror begins. Because every handshake between Johnson and a white mobster is a crack in the foundation. Every meeting where Johnson's voice carries the same weight as a white man's voice proves that racial hierarchy isn't natural law. It's just a system that requires constant enforcement. And in those back rooms where illegal deals get made, the enforcement is failing. Johnson isn't just running numbers anymore. He's accumulating real power, financial power, the kind that lets him help struggling families pay rent, political power, the kind that makes Harlem politicians take his calls, social power, the kind that has young men like Malcolm X seeking him out, recognizing him as someone who figured out how to command respect in a white man's world. But what he did next would make him even more dangerous to the racial order. Johnson starts operating like the head of his own criminal organization. He's got his own crew, his own territory that nobody enters without permission, his own rules that everyone follows. And when conflicts arise with white criminals, he negotiates from a position of strength instead of begging for mercy. He's become something America wasn't designed to handle: a black man with autonomous power. The FBI takes notice. They're not just watching Johnson because he's a criminal. Plenty of white criminals operate in America without this level of federal attention. They're watching him because he's a black criminal who doesn't answer to white authority. Because he's proof that black men can accumulate wealth, command territory, and demand respect if the system's enforcement mechanisms fail. Here's where it gets darker. Johnson keeps getting arrested, but never for long enough to break his organization. He serves time, gets released, and returns to power. The system can't eliminate him through normal legal channels because his operations are too well protected and his community connections too deep. So they try a different approach. They start targeting black organized crime with special intensity while treating white organized crime as a normal law enforcement problem. White gangsters get arrested and prosecuted, sure, but they also get movie deals, newspaper profiles that focus on their intelligence and business skills, cultural narratives that turn them into anti-heroes. Johnson gets surveillance, infiltration, and a media blackout. His story gets buried while white mobsters become folk heroes. But that's not even the craziest part. Johnson's mere existence is rewriting the rules of American crime. Italian mob families start working with black operators in other cities using the Johnson model. Black criminals begin demanding territorial respect instead of accepting subordinate positions. The old system where white crime bosses automatically outranked black ones starts breaking down in urban areas across the country. And this is where everything connects. Johnson isn't just a gangster who happens to be black. He's accidentally become a stress test for white dominance. Every successful negotiation he conducts, every year his organization survives, every dollar that stays in Harlem instead of flowing to white crime families proves that white control isn't inevitable. It's just a choice that requires constant enforcement. When Johnson dies of a heart attack in 1968, thousands of Harlem residents attend his funeral. Not because they love crime, but because they recognize what he represented. A black man who looked white power in the face and refused to blink. Who built something that couldn't be easily destroyed. Who proved that respect could be demanded instead of just hoped for. The system learned from Johnson's example, though. Modern organized crime prosecutions focus heavily on black and Latino criminal organizations, while white-collar crime that steals billions gets treated as regulatory violations. The drug war targets street-level dealers in black neighborhoods, while pharmaceutical companies that create addiction epidemics pay fines. The same fear that Johnson generated, the fear of black economic power operating outside white control. But Bumpy Johnson terrified racist America because he revealed their deepest secret, that white dominance isn't natural superiority, it's enforced inequality. And when enforcement fails, when a black man can sit across from white power brokers and speak as an equal, the whole system's weakness gets exposed. His handshakes with Italian mobsters weren't just business deals. They were cracks in a racial hierarchy that depends on black people never being allowed to accumulate real power. That's why they buried his story, why they focused on white gangsters as fascinating anti-heroes, while Johnson became a footnote. Because remembering him means remembering that white control can fail, that black power is possible, and that the only thing standing between oppression and freedom is the willingness to demand respect instead of asking for permission. Johnson didn't defeat racism, but he proved it could be defeated. One negotiation, one handshake, one moment of recognized equality at a time. And that possibility, more than any gun or any crime, was what truly terrified them. If you want more stories of black people who beat the system, click the video on your screen now.